Hello everyone, it's Carrie at Inky Bee Journals and Ephemera. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning, thank you so much for coming back and choosing to spend a portion of your day with me. I really do appreciate it. Now, in my last video, I showed you a flip through of this beautiful digital kit. It's called the Purple Roses Kit, and it is created by My Porch Prints. I will put some information about this kit and My Porch Prints in the description box below if you are interested. In the last video, I went through all of these pages with you, and I had said that when we come to binding this journal, that we would use brad binding. Now, I must apologise to those of you who did see that video, because at the time that I said that, I wasn't thinking about what kind of spine this journal would have. So unfortunately, because this is just going to be a folded spine and not a flat edge spine, it then means that brad binding is not really going to be suitable. So I do apologise for that. We will still do brad binding in another video down the track with another journal that is suitable for brad binding. In lieu of not brad binding for this journal, what I will do is a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And you will have seen me do that in a previous video. If you have not seen my previous videos, you're welcome to go back and have a look. If you go to the playlist, you will find a playlist under the name of Binding Methods, and you will find all the binding methods there that I have shown on this channel so far, and there will be more to come that will go into that playlist in time. So once you have printed off all of the pages for your digital kit, the next thing we need to do is cut off any white borders that you might have on your printed kit. Excuse me. Now, it is a printer setting. If you have the ability to print your pages borderless, then please do go ahead and do that, because it means you will be able to skip the step of cutting off all the borders. And at this stage, I can't fix that, so I do have white borders around my pages. So the first thing we need to do is go and cut all of these borders off. Now, I have done that on all of these other pages just to save on a bit of recording time. But for those who have not seen me do this before, I will show you how I did it. So before I go any further, I will just remind you that this is the front cover. It is just one of the digital pages that I have printed twice. The second one has been printed on this thick cardstock. This cardstock is about 250 GSM, and it does go through my printer, which is why I was able to print on it. So to cut these borders off, I am just using a steel ruler and a craft knife. Now, I am just going to use my finger blade. And what we do is we just take our ruler and we put the edge of our ruler on the edge of our printed image. Then we put a little bit of pressure down on the ruler just to make sure that you're holding it still so that it doesn't slip and slide around. Then you get your blade, and what we need to do is run the blade right along the edge of the ruler all the way down. We do this slowly and steadily so that we don't allow our blade to slip at the risk of cutting yourself. How sharp your blade is will often determine how many passes you will need to get through your paper or cardstock. Then you have a nice clean edge. So you can continue to do this all the way around your printed edge. Just remember, we don't need to rush doing this because it is a potentially dangerous thing to do. We are dealing with a very sharp knife. So please do be careful. Okay, so we have done our cover page. Now I'll do this one, and this one is just all the other pages to the journal, which will be your signature pages. I just printed on standard copier paper. For me, that standard copier paper is an A4 size, and it is about 80 GSM. If yours is different, that is okay. And once again, we just line the ruler up with the edge of our printed image. Put pressure on your ruler to hold it still and just run your blade down the edge. Try to get these as straight as you can manage. And remember, we're hand making something, so if there's tiny little imperfections with measurements, in most cases, if it's only a few millimeters, you can usually get away with it. So don't panic too much if it's not 100% perfect. We can then throw away all of these pieces. If you are someone who makes your own recycled paper, you can use these pieces. Otherwise, I suggest you put them in your recycle bin because there's not a great deal we can do with these. We might be able to do something with the slightly wider pieces, but these little thin pieces can be a little bit hard to reuse. And whenever you're finished using your craft knife, If you have a cap with it, please always put the cap back on. This protects your blade and it protects you from potentially accidentally hurting yourself. So now we have all of our pages cut. Now the next thing we need to do is fold all of our pages in half, including our cover page, which is our cardstock page. Now, if you have cardstock, you can just fold it over like you do your normal paper, but you may find, because it's a bit thicker, that it may be a little bit harder to fold over. And so there is a way you can get around this. You can get yourself a scoreboard. This one is made by We Are Memory Keepers, but there are many different ones out there. This is a full 12-inch by 12-inch side, but you can get smaller ones. And what you do is you get your scoring tool and you line up the center of your image excuse me, with where one of these little grooves are. And if it's not exactly at the, usually put things like the corner directly into this corner, but sometimes you have to scoot it over just a tiny bit for one of these grooves to be exactly where you need it to be. So then you just run this down the center of your groove. And in fact, I usually find this a little bit more suitable because it just helps give a slightly deeper groove. Must be slightly off there. Okay. I think that'll be all right. Then we can flip it over to the back side, and you will notice when you score that there is a ridge on this side. On the other side there is, it's a bit hard to see with this colour, but there is a divot here and there is a ridge on this side. Now when I was learning to make cards, and that's when I got that scoreboard, I learned that there is a basic little rule to remember, that whichever side your ridge is on, that is the side you fold to the inside. So you would then fold this over to the inside and you might have to fiddle with this one a little bit because it is cardstock. It can be a little bit resistant to leveling up sometimes. And then you can get your bone folder if you have one. And this is going to be a little bit difficult today. And you just score that down. Now I think I'm going to have to cut just a little tiny bit of this edge off to even that up. Usually it's going to be a little bit difficult. bouncing back, doesn't it? Excuse me for a moment while I just try and get this cardstock to behave. It's not usually this difficult, but it hasn't scored exactly where it needed to, so it is a little off where it needs to be, and so it's not going to sit straight. So I'm just going to cut that edge, I think, because it's going to be too difficult to get it to sit where it needs to. It's already, yeah, it's already decided to score itself, so it's going to have to just be cut back on that edge that little bit. So little things like this are not a big issue. Remembering we are making something by hand, things are not always going to be 100% perfect. And that is okay. And that still looks fine. The edge is a little bit shorter here, but that is okay. So there is our cover piece done. Now we need to do all of these pages the same way, but without needing the scoreboard, because it is just copier paper. So we take one short end, we fold it over to the other side to meet the other short end. Now you can fold this way, or you can turn it around and fold this way. Whichever way you are comfortable doing it is okay, as long as you are folding one short side over to the other short side and you are meeting these two short sides as evenly as possible. Slide your finger to the other side where the fold is and use your thumb to go down, and you can use your finger to go up, and just go over that a couple of times and then move on to the next. So I hope everybody is well. I've been a little bit more busy over these last few days than I thought I was going to be. So unfortunately this video is coming out to you a little bit later than I first intended. If any of you out there are medical workers, nurses, or you are just a carer for an elderly parent or for someone with a disability, then you will understand how much time that can take up on your day-to-day time frame. And this is what I have to do in my time off camera often, because I have a mother who suffers from several quite severe medical conditions that cannot be fixed with an operation or with medication. It can be managed, and that's as far as it can go. But she has, on top of that, general age-related issues. And these days she is in need of much more help than she used to be. So this is where I come in. A couple of years ago, I had the extra help of my brother, But unfortunately, my brother passed away in a car accident. So this just leaves me to take on this duty. So I have a little bit of extra work to do these days. So I do apologise if I don't get my videos out quite when I first intend to. I try to aim to get at least one a week out, if not two. If I'm doing really, really well, I might actually get 3 in on 1 week, but that might not always happen. But I am on call 24/7 to look after my mum. So on top of other things that have to be done throughout the day. So we have almost got all of these pages done. You can choose to use your scoreboard to do these ones as well, but it's a much thinner paper. It's not really necessary to use them all. Now, before we put these into a signature, it would be my suggestion to you to save yourself some extra trouble when you're trying to put your signature together, to arrange these pages into the order that you would like your signature to be in before you actually put your signature together. I have already done that, so I don't really need to do that again. But it's just a suggestion. You do not have to actually do that. If you would rather do it the other way, you can. So how do we turn this into a signature? For those of you who are not sure what a signature is yet, it is a group of pages that are put together and put into some form of cover, and that is your signature. Some books, whether they be store-bought books or whether they be a book of sorts that you have created yourself, may have more than one signature in them. And as an example, this one. This is one I made a while ago. This one has 4 signatures in it. So it's a little bit different to this one because this one's just going to be one signature. Now, to put these signatures together, it's a really simple process. I use the taco method, what I call the taco method, and this is just where we cup our hand like this, as though we're holding a taco. You simply get the first page that you would like on the top of your signature, and you take the side that is folded and you put that down into your hand like that. Then you open this up and you repeat the same process. You get the next page with your folded edge, you place it down into the crease of the page before, and you open it up, and you keep repeating that for each page that you have in each signature that you're choosing to make. As I said, this is just one signature, so they'll all be in this one stack. Now, you might be wondering, if I'm doing this, why can't I just sit them all on top of each other and fold them all in half in one go? Well, yes, you can do that, but I find it tends to be a little bit bulkier that way, and if that's what you're looking for, that's fine. But I tend to like mine to sit a little bit flatter, And when you fold them individually like this, you will find that they will have a crisper edge, fold edge. So it just helps things to sit together a little bit better. Now I think I counted 16 pages for this signature. How many pages you choose to use in your signature is really up to you. You might determine that on how thick your paper is and how bulky your journal might end up being at the end of your construction. So once we've got them all together, I turn them, I had it sitting this way, and I like to turn it around this way. And then I like to use my 2 forefingers and just gently press at the ends of the score line here, the fold line, just gently so that I can get all of the pieces that are sticking out each end to just sit flush with each other. Then I like to try and use my fingers, or should I say my thumbs, to try and press into this general area here to press all of those fold lines together as much as I can. Then I fold it in half, and you might find holding it in the taco method again, using a ruler to just gently tap those fold lines together a little bit helpful. Then you can tap on the top and tap on the bottom. Try to make sure you've got everything flush across the top and everything flush across the bottom, and everything pushed as tightly into that crease line as you can. Now basically you have made your signature. It's not bound together yet, but you have made your signature. Now I'm just going to use this clip here to hold this signature together for just a moment, because you can see that on this side we have some fanning of the pages, and that's normal. That is always what is going to happen when you stack pages on top of each other and then have them folded, because all of the pages that were at the bottom of the stack that end up being towards the front or the top of your stack when it's folded, push forward all of the pages that you've put on afterwards. So this is how we end up with this fanning effect, and that's normal. So do we want to keep this fanning effect? Some people don't mind it and embrace it, but some people are not comfortable with that. Now, in some cases I will cut this off, but sometimes it depends on what sort of paper I'm using. This is a digital kit as opposed to just a bunch of different types of papers that I have put together. So because it's a digital kit, we know that there is some images quite close to the edge of these pages, like this butterfly, and we know that if we are going to cut these back too much, we're going to start cutting into, say, the design in the corner here, this line here, and the roses here. We could start cutting into these roses. We could start cutting into this image here, and yeah, it's for some pages you could maybe get away with it, but for other pages it might start damaging the images a little bit too much and eat into your image. So if it doesn't bother you to change your image like that, then you can go ahead and just put your ruler down on the edge and just cut along this edge, just in the same way that we did cutting off the white borders. But for those who do not want to cut those edges off, can we fix this? And well, we can adjust the book so that it's not so noticeable. So how can we do that? Well, I have some of this crochet lace, and what I thought I might do is use some of this crochet lace on the edges of pages. Now, this will not only give me a pretty look on the pages, but it can also help conceal the fact that these pages are fanning out, because I can adjust how far forward or how far back I'm gluing it so that it looks like it's all level. So I think that's what I'll end up doing, so that I don't have to cut these pages back. So I'm just going to place this signature now inside the cover and try to push all of those fold lines into center as much as we possibly can, so that everything is lined up in this fold line here as much as possible. Try to make sure everything is flush across the top and across the bottom. And yes, we still have some fanning here. So I think what we might do is, yeah, just do some pretty lace and it will help conceal that. So now we need to think about putting some holes in our journal so that we can do the 3-hole pamphlet stitch to hold our journal together. Now, the one thing I will say before you start putting holes in your journal, before we start stitching our journal, we need to think about, is there any type of page decorating or ephemera adding that, like pockets and tucks and things, that you want to do in your journal that you think might be a little bit difficult to do when it's already bound. For an example, I'll just hold this together with this. For an example, this journal has stitching in it. So I have actually run this through my sewing machine. This piece was run through the sewing machine with a decorative stitch, and then it was glued down. It's the same with these pages. This decorative stitch has been achieved by running each page through the sewing machine before I stitched the pages together. And just like we have some lace along the edges here, we'll do the same thing on here, and it just conceals that the pages can be a little bit uneven. Now, one of the other things you might find you might want to do before you stitch is, if you are into the idea of inking the edges of your pages, now would be the time to do it before you stitch anything together. Again, there is a few things that included that are a little bit easier to do when they're not already stitched together. So I'm not going to do inking, so I'm going to start working on putting the holes in my journal. So I'm just going to place this near the edge of my journal on the folded side, and it's approximately 20 centimeters. So half of that is about 10. So I'm just going to get my pen and I'm just going to try and get to the edge of the very edge of my spine here and do a line. And hopefully that line came up. Then I want to do a hole about the same distance on both ends, on both this end and this end, that are about the same distance apart from the very edge of the paper on each side. So I would like to go in approximately 1 inch. So 1 inch here is about 2.5 centimeters. So I will put a line there and I'll do the same at this end. So 1, 2.5, so about there. And I can only just barely see my dots. Yeah, so I'm just going to make those dots a little bit easier to see. And then we can start looking at putting the holes into our signature. Now, I am going to use my paper piercer. This is also known as an awl, that is spelt A-W-L, and you will often hear these being called a pokey tool. There are different types out there. This is just the one that I like to use. Please do be careful with these because they are very sharp. Now, I'm going to take this off here. I'm going to open my journal as steadily as I can and do the best I can to keep it all in line where I want it to be. And I'm going to use a couple of large paper clips. These are my jumbo clips. Now, you don't have to use these jumbo clips. You can use any type of paper clips. If you've got paper clips like this, you can use those. But you're looking for something that just holds together your pages and your cover piece together like that. It just stops all your pages from moving about when you're trying to poke holes through the paper and when you're trying to bind them together with your stitching. Now, I am going to use, when I can think of where it is, if I can remember where it is. So this is just a one of those mouse pads, you know, the mouse pad that you use with your computer. I don't need it very often these days because, as I'm sure you know, a lot of computers have the mouse on the actual computer itself, on laptops, but they are handy for this job that we're about to do. So we place this on top of here and get the point of our awl or paper piercer, excuse me, and we place it on the markings that we made, these little dot markings that we made on the spine area, and we just poke that down through there. And we may need to lift it up, and do be careful doing this because these are very sharp, so please watch where you're putting your fingers, and just need to press it through and then remove it, and you've actually made a hole right where you're right through the middle of your fold line here, which is what we want to do, and we have a hole in the center. Now you might think that this hole looks a little bit not so nice on the inside, but I have discovered that if you take your paper piercer and you go back through that hole from the other side, watching where your fingers are, and go back through the hole on this side and then take it out, it still won't look perfect, but it will look a little bit better than it did before. They will always look much nicer if you use a proper hole puncher, because you will always be able to get a perfect round circle on both sides at the same time. The best way to do that with thick pages though, or with many pages like I have here, is to use a crocodile big bite, which is a hole puncher, and an eyelet setter. It is designed to go through thick numbers of pages, like thick pages like this, or a number of pages like this. So if you can afford to look into investing in one of those, they are truly worth doing. But for now, we're just doing this method. So we have this hole done in the center. Now we need to do the same with these other two holes at the edges. And take your time because it's not easy to do this. It sometimes takes a little bit of strength, and as you can see, that side is not 100% in the center there, but it is on the outside. But it's okay if things are not 100% perfect, as I said before. And then we can do this one. So we're basically just looking for a hole to be big enough to put our needle through. Now I will be using this big eye needle, and this is a normal needle because it has a slightly pointed tip. You really only need a blunt needle, and this is mainly because we don't need to actually pierce through anything, because the holes are already there. I am just using a bit of embroidery thread, and oh dear, I think this is falling apart on me. So how much do you need? Well, I think most people work on the theory of 3 times the height of your journal. So we'll work on that. So 1, 2, 3. And then you can clip that off. We can move that out the way. We can move this out the way. And we can thread our needle. And when you thread your needle, you need to leave yourself a little bit of a tail. It doesn't have to be particularly long. We do not need to put a knot in this end because we will use a knot when we bind at the end of our binding, not before, at the start of the binding. Now, before we start binding, we need to decide, do we want our knot on the outside or do we want our knot on the inside? I think I will go with the knot on the inside for this journal. But what I'm going to do before I start is I'm just going to put this tail end roughly in the center of the journal there on one side, and I'm just going to use a clip to hold that right there so that it doesn't run the risk of pulling all the way through the hole when we don't want it to. Then we're going to take our needle and we're going to put it through the center hole to the outside. And we're going to pull it all the way through until this line becomes straight. Like that. So it's straight and it's taut, but it's not overly taut and it's not pulling away from our clip. Then we need to come back to the center of the book from the outside. So we go through the top hole to the inside and we pull through until the line on this side, on the outside of your fold, is straight like this. Then you bring your needle all the way down to the bottom hole from the inside. And you go through the bottom hole to the outside. And you pull all the way through until this line down the middle is straight. Then you can go back through the center hole, back into the center of your journal, and pull through again until this second line here is straight. Now you can take your needle off your thread and we can take our clip off. So now we have these two tails here, and what we need to make sure of is that we have one tail on the right side of this middle line and one tail on the left side of this middle line, and they must both be coming from underneath the line. These need to be roughly the same length, so they're a little bit different in their length, so we're just going to adjust that a little bit. And this is exactly why we don't use a needle that is why we don't use a needle that has a point on it like this, because I've actually gone through the other tail and we don't want to thread through these threads. If you do come back up through the middle and you are both on one side, then just slide the other one underneath so you've got a tail on either side of this center line. Give it a little bit of a tug to make sure that everything is tight, and then do yourself a knot, just like you do if you're tying a shoelace or a bow. Now I like to do 2 to 3 knots just to make sure it is nice and secure. And then from there you can choose what you do with the excess that you have hanging. Now some people like to leave it hanging down like this and put some beads or something on there. Other people like to cut it off short, and if you're going to do that I would leave it maybe 1/4 of an inch away from your knot, just so that if your knot comes loose it's not going to fall apart too easily. Some people, like myself, and this is what I am about to do, I like to do just a little bow like you do with your shoelaces right there in the center, and then you can just cut the excess thread off just like that, and then you can remove your clips and fold back over in half, give it a bit of a squash down. If you think it's sitting up like this too much, you can place them under a heavy book for a few hours or the night or something, and it will just help settle these pages to settle flat. So we have our stitching on the outside, and we have our stitching on the inside and our bow. So we have bound our journal together with our cut piece. So in the next video we will start looking at fixing this side so that we can conceal this fanning effect. And we will do that with the lace, and then we'll start looking at doing some other ephemera adding and things like that to add to our journal. So if you liked this video and you would like to see more, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so that YouTube can send you notifications for each time I upload new content. I'm hoping that the next video will be up in the next few days, but as I did say before, I am a carer for my mother, so sometimes things get a little bit more hectic than I intend. So it may not always be 2 or 3 days later, it may be 4 or 5 days later, but I will do my best to get another one out in the next 3 to 5 days. Until then, I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you so much for being here with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.